The sun was sinking behind broken towers when the human walked into the ruins. His boots crunched against the cracked stone, and every step echoed through the hollow city. Once this place had been alive, filled with voices, markets, and light. Now it was only shadows and whispers of the past. He had come here looking for shelter, a quiet corner to rest after days of travel. The ruins stretched like a graveyard of glass and steel, and silence hung heavy in the air. Yet, as he moved deeper, he felt something watching him, not the eyes of beasts or enemies, but something small, fragile, and afraid. His hand rested on his weapon out of habit, but he did not draw it. Instead, he slowed his steps and listened. The wind carried dust across the shattered walls. And somewhere in the silence, he caught the faintest sound, a breath, quick and sharp, like someone trying not to be heard. He turned the corner and froze. There, pressed against the remains of a broken archway, was a tiny figure. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dying light, a pale shade unlike any he had seen among humans. Her body was thin, almost weightless, as if hunger had been her only companion for far too long. Her eyes, however, were wide and unblinking, staring at him with fear and something else, desperate hope. The girl trembled, but did not run. Her small hands clutched at her chest, as if she held her heart together. Her lips moved, but no sound came at first. Then, with a voice that was barely more than a whisper, she begged, "Please, let me taste your strength." The human blinked, confused. He had faced soldiers, raiders, even alien warlords before, but never had anyone asked him such a thing. Her words carried no malice, no trick, only hunger and desperation. It was not food she was asking for, not water, but something deeper. He took a step closer, and she flinched, pressing herself tighter against the wall. Her eyes darted like a cornered animal, yet she did not flee. Instead, she whispered again, louder this, "Time, please. I will not survive without it. Let me taste your strength." His instinct screamed caution. The ruins could hide many dangers, and he did not know what this small alien meant. But he also saw the way her knees buckled, the way her body swayed, as if she could collapse at any moment. She was not a predator. She was a child of suffering, trapped in a world too cruel for her small frame. Strength. He asked softly, "What do you mean by strength?" Her lips trembled, and tears welled in her strange bright eyes. "In my world, the weak are nothing. They throw us away. They call us worthless. But if I can take strength from you, even a little, I will not be nothing anymore." The human's heart tightened. He had seen many kinds of cruelty across the galaxy. But this was different. This was not an enemy or a fighter. This was someone broken long before he had arrived. He slowly crouched so his height would not tower over her. His voice remained calm. "I don't know what you think I can give you, but I won't hurt you." The alien girl stared at him, her lips parted as if she wanted to believe. But disbelief still held her. For a long moment, silence lay between them. Only the wind moved, carrying dust across the ruins. Then her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees before him. Her thin frame shook, and her hands reached out. Not to strike, not to steal, but to plead. "Please, please. Just once, let me feel your strength." The human hesitated. His hand reached into his pack, pulling out a ration bar. He broke it in half and held it out to her. She stared at it as though it were a jewel from the stars. Her hands trembled when she took it, biting into it with desperation that spoke of days without food. As she ate, tears streamed down her face, but she smiled. This is strength," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human watched her in silence. He had not given her a weapon, not taught her to fight, and yet, with something as simple as food, he had given her what her world had denied, a reason to believe she was worth saving. When the last light of day vanished, the girl leaned against the wall, weak but no longer trembling. She looked at him with wide eyes, not of fear, but of wonder. And in that ruined city of silence, the bond between human and alien began, fragile but real. For the first time in her life, she had tasted strength, not from conquest, not from cruelty, but from kindness. And for the first time in a long while, the human felt that his strength was not just his own, but something he could share. The ruins were still cold, the shadows still deep, but now they were not empty. In the broken heart of the city, something new had been born. Hope night had settled over the ruins. The air was sharp and dry, and the only sound was the crackle of a small fire the human had built. The alien girl sat across from him, her knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes reflected the firelight, wide and unblinking, as if she feared even to blink would make him vanish. She held the half-empty ration bar in her hands like a treasure, nibbling slowly, as if every bite might be her last. The human watched her silently, noting how her shoulders shook each time the wind sighed through the broken stones. She was fragile, yes, but there was something unbroken in her gaze, a stubborn spark. That hunger had not taken. Finally, she whispered, her voice barely louder than the fire's crackle. "Why did you help me?" The human shrugged. "Because you needed it." Her lips trembled, and she looked down at the ration bar. "No one helps the weak where I come from. The strong take, the weak are nothing. If you are small, if you cannot fight, you are thrown away." Her words carried no anger, only the flat weight of truth. The human's jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty across the stars, but hearing it in her trembling voice made it feel heavier. "You are not nothing," he said firmly. She looked up, startled by the strength in his tone. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Then why do you look at me like that?" "How?" "Like I matter." Her voice cracked, and tears welled in her eyes. "No one ever looked at me like that. Not my clan, not the traitors, not anyone." The human leaned forward, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes locked on hers, steady and unyielding. "Because you do matter." For a moment, she was silent. Her small frame trembled as though those words had pierced deeper than hunger ever could. Then, as if something inside her broke open, she began to speak. She told him of her people, a culture built on strength, where worth was measured by the power of one's body. The strongest ruled, the weakest were discarded. She had been cast aside by her own kin, abandoned to starve in the shadows of the world. When traders found her, they saw her as little more than a burden, a thing to be sold or left behind. They mocked her, calling her too weak to be useful, too small to survive. Her words poured out like a wound reopening, each sentence a blade cutting deeper. Yet she spoke with desperate honesty, as if afraid this was her only chance to be heard. "And then I saw you," she whispered, her hands tightening around the ration bar. "You stood like the ones I was told to fear, strong, dangerous, unbreakable. I thought, if I could taste your strength, even a piece, I would not be nothing anymore." I begged because I had nothing else left to give. The human listened without interruption. His chest felt heavy, not with pity, but with something sharper. He had fought wars, carried scars, and lost comrades. Yet this tiny alien girl, trembling before him, carried wounds far deeper than any blade could make. "You don't need to beg for strength," he said finally. His voice was calm, steady as stone. "Strength is not something I can hand you. It's something you already carry. You're alive when they tried to make sure you wouldn't be. That is strength." Her breath caught. Her eyes widened, shimmering with tears. "Alive. But broken." "No," he said. "Alive means unbroken." She buried her face in her knees, silent sobs shaking her small frame. The human let her cry, not moving closer, not pulling away. He knew some wounds needed space before they could close. The fire burned low, casting long shadows across the ruins above them. The stars glittered like cold silver eyes. The human looked at them, then at the girl, and thought of how strange it was that in a galaxy filled with armies, empires, and endless battles, it was here, in a forgotten ruin, that he had found the most fragile fight, the fight of one small soul to believe she was not worthless. After a long while, her sobs softened. She raised her head, her cheeks wet but her eyes clearer. "Will you leave me tomorrow?" she asked, her voice fragile. He shook his head slowly. "Not if you don't want me to." Her breath shivered out of her, and for the first time, a faint smile tugged at her lips. It was small, fragile, and unsure, but it was there. Then, "Will you let me walk with you?" she asked. "I don't want to be alone anymore. Even if I slow you down, even if I am weak, I will follow." The human studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "Walk with me." Her eyes widened, hope sparking. Like a new flame in her chest, she clutched the last bite of her ration bar as if it were a promise. "Then I will." The fire sputtered and dimmed, but the night no longer felt so cold in the ruins of a dead city. A plea of hunger had turned into a plea of hope. And though neither of them knew what waited beyond the broken towers, they would not face it alone. The ruins stretched endlessly as the dawn light crept over the broken skyline. The human rose first, his senses sharp as always, scanning the jagged edges of stone and metal for danger beside him. The tiny alien girl stirred awake, her eyes fluttering as though she could not believe she was still alive. Still by his side, she sat up slowly, her small hands brushing dust from her thin clothes. Her eyes darted to him, uncertain, as though expecting him to be gone. But when she saw him standing firm, waiting, something inside her softened. She whispered, "You stayed." "I said I would," he answered simply. His voice was steady, like stone. Her lips trembled into a fragile smile. She rose unsteadily, her legs weak from days of hunger, yet she forced herself to stand. Her body swayed, and the human stepped forward to steady her. She flinched instinctively, but when his hand rested lightly on her arm, she realized there was no threat, only support. They walked together into the pale morning. The ruins gave way to wild growth, vines spilling over broken roads. The air carried the sharp scent of soil and ash. The girl stayed close to him, every step cautious, as if expecting the world itself to push her back into the shadows. Hours passed before danger found them. The sound came first. A low growl from the brush. The human froze, his hand moving to his weapon. The girl stiffened, her wide eyes flashing with old fear. From the undergrowth crept a beast, its body lean and covered with spiked fur. Its eyes glowed red in the dim light. Its claws scraped the earth as it crouched, ready to strike. The girl's breath caught. She stumbled backward, her voice breaking. "It's a scavenger," she whispered. "They hunt the weak." The human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the beast. His stance was calm, but his presence radiated power. The beast growled louder, sensing a challenge. The girl clutched her chest, trembling. She expected him to abandon her, to run, to let her be the prey. That was how her people would have done it. But he did not move away. Instead, he planted his feet firmly, one hand lifting his weapon, the other raised slightly to keep her back. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was firm but not unkind. The beast lunged. Its claws sliced the air, but the human was faster. He sidestepped and struck, his weapon cracking against its hide. The creature roared, staggering but not falling. It circled, furious, teeth bared. The girl pressed herself against the ruins of a wall, her body shaking. She wanted to scream, to beg him to run, but her voice stuck in her throat. She had seen many die to scavengers. The weak always torn apart, but here, before her eyes, one human stood against it without fear. The beast charged again. Its jaws snapping, the human dropped low. His strike precise. The sound of bone cracking echoed through the ruins. The scavenger howled, its legs buckling. Finally, with one last blow, the human drove it back into the shadows. The beast limped into the brush, snarling, but it did not return. The silence that followed was heavy. The human lowered his weapon. His breath steady, he turned to the girl, who stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes. Her lips parted, but no words came. Slowly, he walked to her, crouching to meet her gaze. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head quickly, her hands clutching her chest. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. You didn't run. You stayed. You fought for me. I said I would protect you." He replied. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, tears spilling down her cheeks. She had begged so many before for mercy, for help, but none had ever stayed. None had ever chosen to fight for her. Yet here was a human, a stranger, risking himself for someone the universe called worthless. She whispered through her tears, "This is strength." The human looked at her quietly, then offered his hand. Her small fingers hesitated before reaching out, trembling when she touched his hand. She gasped as though the warmth itself was a miracle. He pulled her gently to her feet. From that moment, the bond between them shifted. The girl no longer looked at him only with fear or desperation, but with something new, trust, fragile, yet growing. She walked closer to him now, not behind him, not at a distance, but beside him. As the sun rose higher, they left the ruins behind. The girl carried no weapon, no shield. Yet for the first time in her life, she did not feel defenseless. The human's presence was her shield. His strength was not something she had stolen, not something she had begged for. It was something he shared freely that night when they stopped to rest. The girl spoke again. Her voice was soft but steady. "They always told me I was weak. They said no one would ever fight for me, but you changed that." The human looked at her across the fire, his expression calm, but his eyes steady. Then they were wrong. Her chest tightened, and she pressed her hand against her heart, whispering almost to herself, "Maybe." "I am not nothing." The human did not answer, but his silence carried weight. The fire flickered between them, and in that quiet night, trust was born, not from words, but from action. The path beyond the ruins led them into a valley of broken stone and twisted roots. The air was damp here. Carrying the heavy scent of moss and rot, the human walked steady at the front, scanning every shadow. Behind him, the tiny alien girl followed close, her small hands gripping the edges of her torn cloak as though it could shield her from the past that still clung to her. For a time, silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of their footsteps. But the human noticed how her eyes kept darting to the ground, how her shoulders hunched as if carrying an unseen weight. Finally, he asked, "What are you afraid of?" Her steps faltered, she froze, her small body trembling, her lips parted. But no words came. Instead, her eyes filled with a pain so deep it seemed older than her years. He stopped walking and turned, his gaze steady. "If you want me to protect you, I need to understand. Tell me." The girl shook her head violently. No. If I tell you, you will hate me. You will leave me like the others." His voice was calm but firm. "I won't leave." Her chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. For a long moment, she stood frozen. Then she sank to her knees, her hands gripping her thin arms so tightly her nails pressed into her skin. With a broken voice, she whispered, "They put me in a cage." The human's eyes narrowed. His silence was heavy, not of disbelief, but of anger. Anger not at her, but at whoever had done such a thing, she continued, her words spilling now like a wound torn open. When my clan threw me out, traitors found me. They laughed at my size. They said I was too weak to work, too worthless to sell. So they put me in a cage. They paraded me in markets, waiting for someone to buy me, but no one ever did. I was the slave no one wanted, the weakling no one would pay for. So they mocked me, starved me, left me there as if I were not alive at all. Her voice broke, and tears streamed down her face. She curled forward, rocking every time footsteps came. I prayed someone would choose me. Because even as property, I would at least exist. But every time they walked away, and I stayed behind, alone, worthless. The human crouched before her. His shadow fell over her small frame. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of iron. You are not worthless. Not then, not now. Her head snapped up. Her tear-streaked face twisted in disbelief. But I was nothing. I was a thing in a cage. I was weak. And weakness is death. His eyes locked on hers. Unwavering weakness. Is not death, cruelty is. They made you believe their lies, so you would break. But you did not break. You are here. You are alive. That is strength. Her breath hitched. Her eyes searched his face, desperate, as though hunting for even the smallest crack of doubt. But his gaze did not waver. The girl's sobs turned too. Trembling silence, she leaned forward suddenly. Pressing her forehead against his chest, her body shook. Not with fear this time, but with the weight of release for the first time in her life. She was not hiding her shame. She was letting it out. And someone was there to carry it with her. The human did not push her away. His arms lifted slowly. Wrapping around her trembling form, his warmth spread through her, steady and unyielding. She melted into it, her tears soaking his shirt. But she did not care. In that moment, the chains of her past began to crack. They had bound her, crushed her, defined her. But now, under the shield of a human strength, they began to shatter. I am not nothing. She whispered into his chest, as though testing the words, you never were, he said, his voice low but certain. She clung tighter, her tiny hands gripping him as if afraid he would vanish. The human only held her closer. Night fell before they moved again. They camped beneath the roots of a massive broken tree. The firelight cast gentle shadows. The girl lay wrapped in the human's cloak, her eyes heavy but her heart lighter than it had ever been before she drifted into sleep. Her voice broke the silence, soft but steady. You are the first who ever saw me, not as a cage, not as weakness, but as me. The human did not reply with words. He simply adjusted the cloak around her and sat beside the fire, keeping watch. His presence was enough. As the flames burned low, the girl's breathing slowed, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. The chains of fear had not fully vanished, but they had cracked, and with every step beside the human, she felt them breaking more. The morning sun painted the valley in pale gold. The human woke first, as always, his eyes scanning the horizon with the caution of someone who had lived through too many dangers. The tiny alien girl stirred slowly under the cloak he had given. Her small hands curling into the fabric as if it were her last anchor to life. When she opened her eyes, she found him already standing. Steady and silent, his back was to her, his figure framed against the rising sun. She thought for a moment that he looked like the very strength she had begged for, tall, unyielding, and alive in a way no one she had ever known had been. You watch the world like it might bite you, she whispered, her voice still rough. From sleep, he turned his head slightly. The world does bite. That's why I stay ready. She sat up, hugging her knees, and yet you share your food. Your cloak, your fire. That's not strength, I understand. He walked back to her, crouching so his eyes met hers. Maybe that's because true strength is not about keeping everything for yourself. It's about giving. Even when the world takes, her chest tightened at his words. She had grown up believing that the strong survived by crushing others. Yet here was a human who turned that belief upside down. And though part of her still feared it was a dream, another part longed to believe. They left the valley together. Their path led them through forests where ancient trees stretched like towers. The girl walked beside him now, not trailing behind as before. Every time she stumbled on roots or stones, he steadied her with a hand. At first, she flinched from the contact, but slowly she grew used to it, trusting his touch as they walked. She began to talk. She told him of hidden paths carved by her people long ago, tunnels that ran beneath the ground, forgotten by most. She spoke of ruins where machines still slept, machines that could open doors or call down light from the skies. Her knowledge surprised him. She had been cast aside as weak. Yet she carried secrets no warrior had. You know more than you think. He told her once as they stopped to drink at a stream, her eyes lowered. Knowledge is useless when no one listens. Then I will listen, he said simply, her breath caught, and for a long moment she said nothing, but inside something shifted. His words had turned her hidden burden into a gift. Later that day, the forest grew darker, the shadows thick under the canopy. They came to a place where stone ruins jutted from the earth, covered in moss and vines. The girl's eyes widened. She recognized the symbols carved into the stone. This was once a gate, she whispered. My people built it before even the wars. They said it could open paths across the land. But no one remembers how anymore. The human touched the carvings, tracing the faint lines. His voice was thoughtful. And do you remember? She hesitated, her small hands trembling. Not everything, but I heard the traders speak. I listened when they thought I was too weak to understand. I know where the key lies, hidden under the third stone by the river. No one ever checked. Because no one thought I mattered. Her lips quivered, and her voice dropped to a whisper. But I remembered, because when you are weak, listening is all you can do. The human's gaze softened. He knelt, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. That is not weakness. That is unseen power. Her eyes widened, a tear slipping down her cheek. She had never thought of it that way. To her, listening had been survival. Silence had been her prison. Yet he turned it into strength. Together, they uncovered the hidden stone by the river. Beneath it lay a small device, old but still humming faintly with energy. The girl's hands shook as she lifted it. It glowed faintly in her palms, and for the first time she felt she was carrying something important. Something no one else could give. When the human placed his hand over hers to steady it, she whispered, I'm not worthless. No, he said, his voice calm and certain. You are priceless. Her breath broke, and she clutched the device to her chest. She melted into his arms without fear this time, not because she was weak, but because she had found strength in him and in herself. That night, as they rested by a small fire, she leaned against him. Her head fit neatly under his shoulder. Her voice was soft, but filled with a new certainty. I thought strength was claws, weapons, and power. But now I see. Strength is also kindness. It is sharing, it is listening, it is believing. The human did not speak, but his arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she slept without fear. The stars shone above them, bright and endless, and in that vast silence, the bond between human and alien deepened, no longer built on desperation alone, but on the unseen power they had found together. The forest ended at a barren plain. The earth here was cracked and blackened, as though fire had once swept through and left only ash behind. The human and the tiny alien girl walked carefully, every sound carrying far across the emptiness. She stayed close to him, clutching the small glowing device they had uncovered from the ruins. Her eyes darted nervously at the open horizon. "It feels wrong here," she whispered. Like something is watching, the human nodded. His senses told him the same. The plane was too quiet. No wind, no birds, no life, just silence, heavy. And expectant, they had not gone far when the silence shattered. Figures appeared on the ridges around them, dark silhouettes against the pale sky. Weapons glinted and voices rose in harsh alien tones. A warband, fierce and armed, closing in. The girl froze, terror flashing in her eyes. Her voice broke. "They've come for me. They'll kill you if you try to stop them. Please. Run. Leave me. I can't let them take your life." The human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the encircling enemies. His voice was steady. "I don't run." The warband descended, armored and snarling. Their leader, a massive alien with jagged scars, shouted, "The weakling is ours. Step aside, human, or die with her." The girl's legs buckled. She trembled, her heart pounding. This was what she had always believed. The strong take, the weak are nothing, and she, the smallest of all, was doomed to be dragged back into chains. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I am not worth your death." The human's gaze never wavered. He raised his weapon, his voice like iron. "Strength is not about taking. It's about protecting, and she is under my protection." The warband roared and charged, their weapons flashing. The girl screamed as they rushed like a tide of fury, but the human moved, swift and unyielding. He struck with precision, every blow a storm. His weapon cracked against armor. His fist sent enemies sprawling. The girl could only watch in awe. He fought not like a beast, not like a tyrant, but like a shield made flesh. His strength was not wild, but controlled. Every strike meant to protect her, not to prove himself. Yet there were too many. They swarmed him, blades cutting, claws striking. His body bled, but he stood firm. His breath came heavy. His movements slower. Still, he did not fall. Still, he did not retreat. The girl's heart shattered. She saw him bleeding for her. She felt the weight of her own fear crushing her. She wanted to hide, to vanish. But then she remembered his words. Alive means unbroken. Weakness is not death. Her trembling stopped. She clutched the glowing device tighter. Her mind raced back to the carvings on the ruins, to the whispers she had once overheard. Her voice rose above the chaos. Human, place the device in the earth. He heard her through the clash of battle without hesitation. He slammed the device into the cracked ground. The earth shook. The warband stumbled. K. Their leaders snarled in rage. Light erupted from the soil, lines of energy spreading like veins. A fire, a circle of blazing symbols formed around the human and the girl. The warband staggered back as flames roared upward. The girl's eyes widened. She had remembered correctly. The gate was not only a path, it was also a shield, ancient and powerful. Her knowledge, once worthless in the eyes of others, had saved them. The human stood at the center of the light, his body bloodied but his stance unbroken. He looked at the girl, his voice calm even as fire burned around them. "This is your strength." Her tears flowed, but this time they were not only of fear. They were of pride, of hope. "Our strength," she whispered. The warband roared from the edges, trying to break through, but the fire flared higher, forcing them back. Their leader howled in frustration, retreating into the shadows with a promise of return. When the last of them vanished, the fire slowly died. The device dimmed, leaving only smoke and silence. The human dropped to one knee, his breath heavy, his wounds bled, but his eyes stayed on her. The girl rushed to his side, her small hands trembling as she tried to stop the blood with scraps of cloth. Why risk everything for me?" she cried. He looked at her. his voice soft but firm, because no one should face chains again. Not you, not anyone. She broke then, sobbing as she held on to him. But in her heart, something had changed forever. She had begged once to taste his strength. Now she had discovered her own. Not strength of claws or weapons, but strength of memory, of knowledge, of will. That night, under the broken sky, she whispered as he rested against her, "I am not weak anymore," and for the first time, she believed it. The plane was silent again, smoke drifting in thin trails across the cracked ground. The warband had retreated, their threat broken for now. The human sat against a stone, his body tired and marked with wounds, yet his eyes still burned with steady light, strong as the fire that had saved them. The tiny alien girl knelt beside him, her small hands pressing cloth against his injuries. Her touch trembled, not because she feared him, but because she feared losing him. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "You should have left me. I was nothing. I was not worth this." His gaze lifted to hers, calm even in pain. "You are worth more than you believe. You are alive, you are strong, and you are not alone anymore." Her breath caught, her heart thudded painfully in her chest. For so long she had begged, pleaded, even prayed to be seen. And now, sitting beside this human who bled for her without hesitation, she finally felt it worth. She leaned forward, her forehead pressing against concede. His shoulder, her voice broke. "All my life I thought strength meant crushing others. I thought it meant surviving at any cost. But you showed me something different. You gave when you had no reason to give. You stayed when you had every reason to leave. That is strength, true strength." The human placed a hand on her back, his voice low but steady. "And you showed me something too. You remembered the hidden paths. The device, the gate, you saved us. That was not my strength. That was yours." Her eyes widened. She had never thought of it that way. To her, listening, remembering, and surviving in silence had felt like weakness. But now, for the first time, it was called power. She let the words sink deep into her heart. Days passed as they traveled together. Leaving the barren plain behind, the land grew softer, green. Hills rising where the black earth ended. The girl walked closer to him now, no longer trailing behind, no longer waiting to be left. Every step she took was steady, her eyes forward instead of downcast. At night, by the fire, they shared words. She asked him about his world, about the stars he had seen, about the battles he had fought. And he asked her about her people, about the songs she remembered, about the hidden ruins she once wandered. Slowly, she began to smile more. Not the fragile smiles of fear, but real ones, one evening, as the fire glowed bright against the dark. She whispered, "When I first saw you, I begged to taste your strength. I thought if I could steal even a piece, I would survive. But now, I don't need to steal it. I have found my own, because you showed me how." The human looked at her, his face calm, but his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "Then my strength has done its work," he said. She blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Strength is not meant to be held forever," he said. "It's meant to be shared, so others can carry it when we fall." Her throat tightened and tears stung her eyes, not of sorrow this time, but of something greater. She reached out and took his hand in both of hers, holding it tightly. "Then I will carry it. I promise, as long as I live, I will carry it." The human's lips curved into the faintest smile. He gave her hand a firm squeeze. When dawn came, they rose together. The sun bathed the hills in light, and the girl stood taller than before. She no longer hunched, no longer whispered as if ashamed of her voice. She walked with him as an equal, not as a shadow. They came at last to a ridge that overlooked a wide valley. The wind carried the scent of new life, and the world stretched before them vast and open. The girl's heart swelled. She turned to him, her eyes shining. What now? He looked across the valley, his voice steady. Now we walk forward. Together, she smiled, her tears glimmering like jewels in the sun. She stepped close, leaning into him, and for the first time in her life, she melted into another's arms. Not from weakness, not from fear, but from love and trust in his embrace. She was no longer the caged, starving, worthless child the galaxy had thrown away. She was alive, she was free, she was strong, and in that moment, she knew the truth. She had not just tasted his strength, she had found her own. The ruins, the chains, the fear, all of it was behind her now. Before her stretched a future she had never dared to dream, a future built not on cruelty, but on hope. And as the human held her close, both of them knew, no matter what awaited them in the stars, they would face it not alone, but together.